No matter the best intentions or what the so-called experts say, not every relationship is salvageable. Michael McLean, NoBullBook.com, BadassLetter.com, the toughest advice for the toughest businessmen like you. Today I wanted to talk about relationships in our worlds, our brand new worlds as Badass Millionaire world builders. We're building worlds that include relationships with very different people in very different rules and roles inside of our new kingdoms. You know, you have relationships with your best friend's secret weapon. You have relationships with your children, your teenagers, your adult children, your grandchildren. We have relationships with family, relatives, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. We have relationships with old high school friends, college, university friends, social buddies, golfing buddies, this type of thing. We have relationships with our employees. We have relationships with mentors, coaches, the business I'm in, the coaching and consulting business. We have relationships with vendors and contractors, people we hire to do things. Relationships, you know, world building is about relationships. But when we apply the concept, the principle of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, accurate thinking principle, which, by the way, is by far the least popular of all of his Think and Grow Rich principles. Accurate thinking, the way things really are, not the way we wish they were, or we wish people were, or we see things as we want them to be instead of the way they actually are. One of the characteristics of the most successful world builders that I deal with is they have this fundamental discipline of accurate thinking. They see every situation as it is. They see every person and relationship in their world as it really is. And when I see men struggle, the 99%, the biggest common denominator is the complete lack of accurate, call it blunt, thinking. In other words, they see the situation in the world as the way they wish it would be, the way they want it to be. They say people in their world, whether it's their spouse, whether it's their children, whether it's their employees, whether it's vendors, whether it's any relationship, they see it as the way they wish it was, or the way that they want it to be, or even the way that it should be. You know, rightfully so, the way it should be, but it's not. So you've got delusion, and all progress starts with the truth. So I am a pro-family guy. I am a pro-marriage guy. I believe that when we are married to our best friend's secret weapon queen, I believe that we as men, as badass kings, need to do every single thing under the sun to make sure that we continue to grow that relationship. When we mess up, we need to repair, we need to rebuild, we need to reinvent. But regardless of what happens in our marriages, I believe that we owe it to ourselves, our spouse, and our children that we do whatever it takes to make that relationship work. So at the end of the day, I am a stayed, married kind of guy. I believe, like my friend Dan Leonis of the Einstein Blueprint, I believe that a family is best when mom and dad stay married. I believe that it takes two parents to raise any child, and I believe we can best do that job inside a positive, growing marriage. I also believe that there is irreparable damage done to children, especially young children and teenagers, when mom and dad decide to split. And you'll hear a lot of nonsense about this where people say, well, it's better for the children. It wasn't a healthy relationship. And there are parts to that. If it's a violent or an abusive relationship, then yes, that does have some credibility. But in situations where the mom and dad just give up because it's hard or because it's difficult or because it's not brand new and because it's not like in the movies or on TV where you're supposed to be madly in love every day, when they just surrender and give up, like 51% of the divorce rate now in North America and climbing, then they try to sell the notion that, well, it's best for the children. Well, in those situations, it's not best for the children, and that's a proven fact, because what happens when husbands and wives separate and divorce, all of a sudden children lose that sense of security. In other words, now there's two homes. Now for your children, there's two sets of rules. Now for the teenagers, there's two homes, two sets of rules, two sets of standards. The same even for adult children into their 20s. Two homes, two sets of standards, two parents to please. And Dan has talked about this where, it's extremely, extremely troubling and upsetting for children when their world all of a sudden is divided. And this is the reason that, children that grow up and have marriages that end in divorce, a large percentage grew up in a family, in a single parent family. So, that type of behavior, ends up more chance of that future behavior. So more breeds more. In cases, what I'm talking about today is there's just some relationships that end. And that can be a marriage. That can be a relationship with a lifelong friend. That can be a relationship with an employee, a business partner. It can be a family member. Any person that's in your world. And the difference is this: when you put in all the effort on your end to become the best version. So if you want your marriage to improve, you want your marriage to work, as a badass millionaire, you say to yourself, okay, who do I have to become now for me to be the best version of a husband for my wife? And if you go about that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, that's the best strategy. You working on you, controlling the controllables. And that works for 95% of businessmen that are trying to repair their marriage, trying to reinvent it, trying to transform their marriage into a marriage that's on fire. Things like, appreciation and hugging and telling our queen how much they mean to us, leaving notes, having date nights, all of those things. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. It's a two-way street. Relationships are a two-way street. And we've all had friends that we invite over to our place, and you'll have a get together, and then you'll invite them again, and you'll have a get together, and you'll invite this couple or friends or whoever it is, and then you've had friends in your life that never reciprocate. In other words, you've never been to their place, or you've never been invited back to dinner, or you've never been, you've never been offered to spend. It's all on you, right? It's a one-way street. Well, that's the danger in relationships, including marriages and relationships with, people in our lives that are no longer serving us. I talk about cutting the rope with toxic people. I talk about curating and swift sorting people out of your life that don't serve you. And in some unfortunate cases, that can be somebody as close as a girlfriend, as a husband or a wife, a key employee, a business partner. But just to say, okay, I'm going to stick to this no matter what, when it's not a two-way street, is really, that's not the way it works. Some relationships just simply don't go the distance, and you have to make that tough call, and you have to walk away from some people. And some of those people can be people that are very close in your world, but you have to do it for your mental health. And in those cases, it's a situation where my brother said it best. My brother runs his own law office. My brother's an attorney, and he handles a handful of divorces every year. And my brother David said, Michael, he says, what do you think are the two reasons that 95% of couples divorce? What are the two reasons? And I guessed at the first one, like you will, that financial. He goes, yes, number one is financial. They fight about money. There's money problems. They fight about money. So people, number one reason they separate is they fight about money. He goes, you'll never guess what the second one was in. And I never really thought about it. And he goes, personal growth. Personal growth. And I thought about it for a few seconds and I was like, man, you nailed it. He said, in the divorces that he handles, he says one of the partners is no longer, or maybe has never been, dedicated to personal growth and achievement. In other words, they're not dedicated or committed to being the best version of themselves. They're not on a path of self-discovery. They're not on a path of constant and never-ending improvement. Maybe they're not readers. Maybe they're not into health and nutrition. Whatever it is, they're not on a personal mission. They're not into goal setting. They're not into personal achievement. So not only are they growing apart, but one person isn't actually growing. It's not just that you're not growing, that you're growing apart. It's that you're simply not growing at all. So you have one person who's, their life is on fire. They're committed to constant and never-ending improvement. And then you have one partner who that's not. They're not committed to the relationship. They're not committed to personal achievement. They're not committed to goals. They've checked out. So in those cases, those relationships, if they don't change, if the dynamic doesn't change, if both people aren't committed to the same goal, the same mission, then those relationships need to end. And if not, you're going to burn the next 30 or 40 years of your life, trying to make a relationship work. That's never going to work because it takes two. It takes two. And again, this is from a guy who believes in marriage. I believe in staying married. I believe in doing everything under the sun to stay married, especially when you have children and teenagers and young adults. And I believe in the family. I believe that every child needs a mom and a dad and needs to be raised by both. In those situations where children are involved, the only advice I have as a father would be to double down on your time with your children, with your teenagers, and with your adult children. If you ever have to separate it, if the relationship is unsalvageable, in other words, your wife or your partner's not interested is not interested in growing or working on it or whatever you want to call it, and you do separate, in those situations, you got to double down. You got to 2x, you got to 3x, you got to 4x on time with your children. You got to spend twice as much time with your son or your daughter. You got to spend 3 times as much time. You got to communicate double what you normally do, 3x, 4x, whatever it is. And then you're all in as a father, no matter what the situation is with your spouse, you're all in with your children like never before. That's the best of a very difficult situation. But just to stand there and say, every relationship is salvageable, it's simply not true. And it doesn't serve because, there's no silos in our worlds, right? You can't have a successful business and you can't have a successful health and mental health and physical health if you have a toxic marriage. The same way you can't have a incredible marriage but a bankrupt business, and it all bleeds into each other. So sometimes at the end of the day, you have to look at it and say, you know what? This relationship has gone the distance. There's nothing else I can do within my control to make this work. And then it's time to make the decision. And that's a personal decision for every man. But some cases, you're going to have to cut the rope. And, you might open yourself up to a brand new world of optimism. You might open up your world to a brand new level of independence and autonomy. And you never know what's around the corner. You might meet the next person of your dreams. But regardless, your role as a father never changes. In fact, you need to double and triple down on your responsibilities if and when something like this ever happens. And I think that that's accurate thinking personified. It's a two-way street. And if it's all just, if it's in your situation where it's just give, improve, sacrifice, and invite, and the person never, ever takes you up on it, I think you have to look in the mirror and say, you know what? This relationship does not have a future, and you have to make those tough decisions. But to just keep investing in something that has no future is not physically or mentally or spiritually healthy for you. So just like a relationship with employees, most relationships with employees don't go the distance. Most relationships with business partners don't go the distance. Most partnerships in business don't go the distance. Same with vendors. People come and go, lives change, people's interests change, people's values change. But it's not about being like, different people. Like my wife, Krista, and I are an example. Like, we're very different people, but we share the same values. We value we value marriage, we value family, we value honesty, we value integrity, we value high character, we value health, we value giving back and serving other people. And Krista, she's committed to self-improvement. She's committed to self-discovery. She's always reading. She's always listening to podcasts. She's always taking classes and courses. She's always coaching seminars, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, all this stuff. And none of that is my cup of whiskey. None of that is my cup of whiskey. But because she's growing as a person, because she's chasing her mission, she's achieving her goals, she's a healthy and happy person, and that bleeds into our relationship. She doesn't have to study what I study. She doesn't have to like what I have. She doesn't have the same passions as I do, nor should she. And then I'm at the other side. I'm over here, reading and studying and listening and teaching and writing and growing and chasing my personal dreams. And some of these dreams we share, but we don't need to share all of them. But that's the distinction right there. We're both growing as human beings. We're both committed to personal development. And if I wasn't committed to personal development and she keeps growing and growing, we're not only just growing apart, but I'm not growing. I'm actually dying. If I'm not committed to personal development, I'm dying and she's growing, and there's no chance. So that's what it comes down to in relationships are the two people, are the husband and wife, are they both committed to personal development? It doesn't have to be the same areas. But like I said, peace of mind and happiness comes from two things, right? Comes from constant, never-ending improvement. And number two, serving others. Those are the only two ways I've ever found to be happy or to have peace of mind. If you're always growing and you're always contributing, in other words, you're growing and you're helping people, you're going to be an incredibly happy person most of the time. Now, if you're not doing those two things and your partner is, then there's no chance. So I just wanted to make that comment because I'm a pro-marriage guy, I'm a pro-family guy, I'm a pro-father guy, I'm a pro-mother guy. I believe in those fundamentals, but I also believe in accurate thinking, which is some relationships, including marriages, including relationships with toxic people. If the other person is not willing to put in the time, if the other person is no longer interested, if the person is no longer interested in developing the relationship, then there comes a point where you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. Do I continue on this road? Do I continue to fight this battle alone when it's not a two-way street? Or do you curate, swift sort it, and cut that relationship, but also triple down as a dad, triple down as a father, and use the energy in that area. So these are the tough choices that have to be made, but at the end of the day, we need to be extremely honest with ourselves. Use Napoleon Hill's principle of accurate thinking with any struggle with a relationship, whether it's an employee, whether it's a family member, whether it's your spouse, whatever it is. Constantly ask yourself, how is this really? Okay, not as you wish it was, not as it should be, not as, if it was a perfect world, but see the person as they really are. See them as they personally want to be. And you can't, when you force things, bad things happen. It's like forcing something on somebody to change or forcing them to read business books. That never works out. You need to discipline yourself to see people and situations as they really are, not as you want them to be and not even as they should be, but to see things where they are, see people where they are and who they really are, and see the situations through that lens of accurate, honest thinking. Okay? So, a couple of deadlines coming up. This is the last few days. I'm opening up immigration for my Michael McLean World Building newsletter. If you missed out in August and you want to correct that mistake, you can apply. You can subscribe at badassletter.com today. I'll throw in a free t-shirt. I'll throw in a copy of my old book, my $55 million marketing blueprint. I'll open up the locker room to you, and it's $97 per month, and immigration will be open for the next 3 to 4 days maybe. I'll check that deadline and put it in the email. Remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel if you find these daily mini adventures on my broken iPhone 7. If you find value in these, remember to subscribe and share with your friends. Also, just a few days to apply for my $50,000 Champions 5-Star Mastermind. If you want to hook your wagon and you want to be joined at the hip with me for the next year with 15 of the top 1% fathers, husbands, entrepreneurs, community leaders, then apply at badasschampion.com below. Badasschampion.com below. 5 questions. I'll get on the phone. We'll decide whether I'm a fit, maybe I'm not. We'll decide whether you're a fit, maybe you are, maybe you aren't, and we'll make a decision from then. But that's about 10x. The $50,000 is irrelevant. It's about 10xing everything in your life over the next year. Your income, your wealth, your time management, your health, your fitness, your nutrition, your marketing, 10x across the board. So those are the 2 deadlines. Newsletter at badassletter.com. You're either in or out. Deadline coming up this week. Immigration is only open for a few days to jump in to the Brotherhood. And finally, my year-long 5-Star Champions Mastermind. That's badasschampion.com. Link is also below. Remember to tell the most important people in your life, like I do every single day, how much they mean to you, how much we love them. Tell your wife and your children how much you love them, and make sure you control the controllables in your life, what you can do. What kind of a man do you have to become? Who do you have to become to be the best husband? Who do you have to become to be the best father? Who do you have to become to be the best grandfather? Who do you have to become the best entrepreneur? And who do you have to become to be a hero in your own home? And work every single day on that. The man in the mirror, control the controllables, take care of you first. 2 words that changed my life, 2 words that can certainly change your life. Be relentless.